What's up, everybody? It's your boy Shane G back again with another episode of Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. Of course, before we get into it, please make sure you like, you share, and you subscribe for all of the latest content. Now, been in the news a lot lately. The Taraji P. Henson interview that went viral, where she was talking about pay disparity. Now, she was speaking more from a racial inequality standpoint, where, you know, she works just as hard as a lot of her white counterparts, doesn't get paid the same. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussions as far as, you know, movie budgets and, you know, what do they think they're going to get on the return, and that's obviously going to reflect in the, you know, payouts and things of that nature. So it's been a big thing. I am going to play that video, but I want to use that as a catalyst for a broader conversation regarding inequality when it comes to pay in general. Not necessarily in Hollywood, not necessarily if you're a celebrity and, oh, this person made $5 million and I only made $3 million. Like, you know, not that type of stuff. Like, because that is hard to sort of empathize with as a regular person. People aren't really going to feel sorry for a millionaire who's complaining about money. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not really a good, it just, you know, right now in America with all these numbers I'm about to break down to you, you can see why that argument may fall flat coming from her specifically. But the sentiment of what she's saying, I totally agree with when it comes to just imbalance of power in general when it comes to any sort of corporate entity. So I do want to play her video, and then I want to just go over some facts. You know, I like to do that. So I'm going to give you guys some facts about just pay discrepancies, how much things cost. You know, we're going to see if there's a better way maybe that we could, you know, find some equality in the system, you know. So let's get right to it, shall we? Let me make sure I'm all good here. Yep, we are good to go.
I'm just tired of working so hard, being gracious at what I do, getting paid a fraction of the cost. I'm tired of hearing my sisters say the same thing over and over.
Taraji P. Henson's brutally honest and emotional explanation of Hollywood's pay disparity is going viral.
I hear people go, you work a lot. Well, have to. The math ain't mathing. Big bills come with what we do. We don't do this alone. The fact that we're up is a whole entire team behind us. Yes. They have to get paid. I'm just tired.
Okay. So, again, basically her sentiment, you know, in the longer version of this is, you know, you have your Meryl Streeps, you have your Julia Roberts, you know what I mean? And they don't have to work as consistently as somebody like she does, because she doesn't get the big payouts that they get just for being in the movie. Like, you know, again, I don't know the numbers, but let's just say, you know, basically her complaint is if Meryl Streep signs on to a movie, she's getting 10 mil up front. Whereas if Taraji signs on to a movie, even if it's the same budget, because you got to remember she was in Benjamin Button, huge budget, that her pay offer up front is always going to be less than that of a Julia Roberts or a Meryl Streep or whoever. And she's not even just talking about herself. She's talking about other elite actresses or actors. I think it's just actors now. Elite actors who are women who have been doing this for a long time and aren't getting near the same payouts as the other ladies that I mentioned. So that's her big issue. But what I want to do is use that as a catalyst to talk about a bigger issue, which is pay disparity in the workplace in general. So the first thing that I'll show you to illustrate that point is from the Economic Policy Institute. This was written in September of last year, so this is a relatively new article. CEO pay slightly declined in 2022, but it has soared 1,209.2% since 1978, compared with a 15.3% rise in typical workers' pay. So just that disparity right there. Since 1978, the average worker has seen about a 15.3% raise since 1978, mind you. And this is number wise. This isn't equating it value for today's dollar versus the dollar in 1978. This is just a numbers thing. So numbers wise, we get about 15.3% more than we did in 1978, whereas CEOs get about 1,209% more than they did in 1978. Remember that video I told you guys about where I said that workers' pay was decoupled from productivity? What year was that? I believe it was right around this time. So you see how that looks. But we will continue here. Let me blow this up so y'all can read it too. So the summary of this article is CEO pay dipped in 2022, but remains enormous compared with the pay of other workers. CEOs are granted massive compensation packages by corporate boards because of their bargaining power, not because of their skills. CEOs' exorbitant payouts have far outpaced the pay of typical workers over decades. Key findings in this study, and we're not going to go over the whole thing. I got too many other joints to go over with y'all. But so the key findings in this: CEO pay is linked strongly to the stock market, and market declines in 2022 led to an uncharacteristic dip in CEO pay. So again, even though the article is saying in two years ago now in 2022 that they did have a slight dip in their overall pay, that is unusual. It's uncharacteristic. Typically, their pay, as you can see, since 1978 goes up every year. Cumulatively, however, from 1978 to 2022, top CEO compensations shot up 1,209.2% compared with a 15.3% increase in a typical worker's compensation. In 2022, CEOs were paid 344 times as much as a typical worker, in contrast to 1965 when they were paid 21 times as much as a typical worker. Now just think about those numbers. Let's say you make $20 an hour. What's 21 times 20? Let's do that math real quick. 21 times 20 equals 420. So you'd be making 20 an hour. They'd be making $420 an hour. $20 an hour, 40, that's $800 a week before taxes. No taxes taken out. That's exactly $800 a week. How much does the CEOs pay in that same time frame? 420 times 40. $16,800. This was in the 60s. This was in the 60s when a worker made $800. The CEO made $16,000. That was the number I just, let me just make sure, do it again. Pretty sure, 420 times 40. Yeah, $16,800. So you're making a clear $16,000 more per week than the average worker. This was in 1965. Now let's look at those numbers. We're going to go off the same $20 an hour, which we already established is $800 a week. How much hold on, I gotta do that other math first. Hold on, y'all got me doing math. 344 times 20, because you're making 344 times as much as the typical worker. So that's $6,880 per hour. And what's that times 40? $275,200. I feel like I messed that math up somewhere, but I think you get what I'm trying to do. Like, that's an outrageous amount of money compared to what the workers make. That's insane. To illustrate just how distorted CEO pay increases have gotten, in 2021, CEOs made nearly 8 times as much as the top 1% of wage earners. So the highest paid positions in a company that are, you know, essentially you come in, you clock out, you do a very specific job. The top 1%, top 0.1% of them, people in those positions. So this is upper level management positions. This is things like that. CEOs made 8 times as much as them. And they're making probably 8 times what you make as the hourly worker. Do you see why this balance is crazy? Like, and you just expect people to work harder and they'll be able to have a nice life and all of that too? No, it requires way more than just hard work, especially in 2024. You have to be innovative. You have to lack sleep. You have to be trying to constantly think of the next thing that hasn't happened yet, but possibly will. So that way you can hurry up and essentially create the next Amazon, and then you can be successful. Like, because the way that corporations are set up, it's essentially incentivized to keep everybody at a certain level so that the people at the top come away with the majority of the money. Why this matters. Exorbitant CEO pay is not just a symbolic issue. It has contributed to rising inequality. CEOs are getting paid more because of their leverage over corporate boards, not because of contributions they make to their firms. So that's a misnomer as well. Again, this whole, the harder you work, the further you go. If you're a CEO, then you must have just worked crazy hard to get to that point, and you deserve all of the money that you get, despite how much detriment it causes to your workers to receive that amount of money. Again, because money's a finite resource. Yes, we can kind of just print it as we want, but, you know, the more you print it, the less value it has. So that it is a finite resource. You know, just like water. Like, everybody can have water, but if everybody takes a cup of water out of the ocean eventually, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's not going to be, you know, maybe that's a bad example, but you guys get what I'm saying as far as the metaphor I'm trying to use. So, it's because once you get to that position, you, and I've discussed this with friends of mine. They say sometimes when mergers happen, high-level people don't get let go because they're contracted workers. It's not like they receive an hourly wage and can just be let go. If they have a contract from now till December and it's June, you're more likely to just find something else for that person to do until their contract runs out, rather than letting them go, to say, you know, because you're going to have to pay them anyway. So it doesn't make sense to pay them to do nothing, essentially, because then you're just basically just losing money for no reason. So it's that a lot of the times. It doesn't necessarily matter how hard you work or how good of a worker you are or how much you show up and, you know, come up with extra ideas that help the company. None of that matters. None of that matters. Once you're at a certain level, it's all about negotiating and having leverage over the corporate boards. It's not because of the contributions that you make. It's not because of the hard work that you put in. So let's just get rid of these misnomers. So this is from the Economic Policy Institute. Now, what I want to look at, keeping those numbers in mind, the average CEO pay is 344 times as much as a typical worker as of 2022. So it's probably gone up. What is the average salary in the United States? This is from Yahoo Finance. So in this article, we will look at the average salary in each state of the United States. We will also explore average and medium incomes in the United States, along with some companies that have recently increased salaries in the U.S. If you want to skip our detailed analysis, you can head straight to the 10 highest states with the highest average salary in the U.S. So we're not going to do that. We're going to just look at the broad America. As of 2020, because this is another argument that is also said all the time. Well, this is America. This is a land of opportunity. You know what I mean? If you want to be successful, you just got to go out there and get it. You know, the information's there. So it should be easy for you to just look it up and go decide what you want to do and figure it out. Like, that's a very common argument that people make, especially if they've done that. Then they feel like, well, if I did it, everybody else can. All right. That's why certain people are special. You know what I'm saying? Certain people have certain things that make them stand out from the rest. Yes, they deserve to be rewarded for that, but that doesn't mean that it has to come to the severe detriment of everybody else. As of 2023, the average salary in the United States varies largely across industries, job positions, age groups, level of experience, and educational backgrounds. However, The average salary nationwide in the United States, according to Forbes, is $59,428. Stop there. Less than $60,000 per year is the average household salary per year. On the other hand, median household income in the U.S. was $70,784 in 2021. So it looks like, you know, I mean, obviously the median is the middle, the average is all the numbers combined. You know, you guys know how to do math. So, which I possibly clearly don't if you watched earlier in the video, but in the words of my man Taz, I digress. It is important to note the average salary in each state in the U.S. can range widely, starting from a minimum gross hourly wage of $27.77. Depending on the occupation and location, salaries can go from $45,000 to as high as $335,000 per year on average, with additional benefits such as housing and transportation. The median salary in the USA stands at $89,000 per year. This indicates that half of the population earns less than this amount, and the other half earns more than that median figure. Okay. So the average is about 60K, which means there's more people making closer to the 60K than there are that 80K number that we looked at, because that's the median. Like that could literally be, now I know it's not the case, but that could literally just be one person who makes that and everybody else and then everybody else. So now obviously that's not how that works. I'm sure there are more than one person in the United States making 89 grand a year, but that is the median. That's not the average. So the average is a better number to look at because that is what is closer to representing what more people face. So that's the average salary, about 60K. Now, what's the average rent in the United States? This is from Rent Cafe. What's the average rent in the United States? $1,702. For an average apartment of less than 900 feet, you're paying about $1,702. Now, let's do that math. $1,702 times 12, about 20 grand. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing that the average person, the average household, I should say, household. So that could be two people making 30 grand each. The average household makes about 60K a year. And average rent is a little over 20 grand a year. So you're spending a third of your income on rent. Do you think a CEO is spending a third of his income on his properties that he owns? I don't think so. Federal Planning Bureau released some data and the inflation forecast going into 2024. The important part right here. On the basis of these, hold on, let me make sure that y'all can read it because it's small. Here we go. Now, on the basis of these inflation forecasts, which you can see over here on the right-hand side, the average consumer price inflation should be about 3.2% in 2024. Okay, it doesn't seem too outrageous compared to 4.6% in 2023. Okay, so it should be less than last year. And 9.59% in 2022. Wow, what was going on in 2022 that caused all this inflation? Where was all of our money going? Oh, right, Ukraine. That's right. Ukraine. So, and COVID. So, the average growth rate of the so-called health price index, which is used for the price indexation of wages, social benefits, and house rent, should be 3.3% in 2024 compared to 4.33% in 2023 and 9.25% in 2022. So, okay, it appears to be going down, which is obviously a good thing. We definitely want and need that. However, my question is, when we see that wages have essentially been stagnant since 1978 for your average worker, and then we see inflation go up 9% one year, 4% the next year, and it's scheduled to go up another 3% this year. And again, the wage is going to be the same. I showed you the average cost of rent. That's gone up every single year. That's a part of the inflation costs. When is it going to be that we're spending half of our money on rent instead of just a third? And I just spoke about rent. I didn't speak about groceries, which obviously, you know, you need. You got to eat. I didn't speak about gas in your car. Didn't speak about insurance for your car. Didn't speak about any repairs that may happen. If you own a house, didn't speak about your furnace going out, leak in your basement, flooding, all that stuff. That's all coming out of your that 2/3 left of your money that you got. This is what people need to realize versus, you know, necessarily looking at it from what Taraji said about her specifically. Because, yeah, again, it's hard to feel sorry for a millionaire. You know, if you're up millions, I don't care if you were supposed to get paid $7 million, you only got paid $5 million. To me, somebody who is way more along the lines of the average worker, that's not going to move me. Now, however, if you were to open up this discussion and say, you know, now I'm okay, it's still not fair, but this is what happens all across America. This is what's going on in every business, in every industry. You know, it's not just me. It's not just actresses. This is what's going on in every industry across the board. The people at the top are taking advantage of the people who work for them. And they're giving them as little as possible so that they can obviously, you know, because making a profit makes sense. Like, I'm not anti-profit, but there has to be some sort of fairness that's established for the people that are generating that profit. You know, because the CEO, it's like, cool, I get it. Let's say the company, let's say you're the founder of the company. I'm going to give you like the utmost work respect, right? So let's say you started the company. You did everything, you know, for the first 10 years, ground level. You know, you were personally in the trenches getting everything established. Cool. I respect that. And I respect the grind. But at what point, when you put everybody in place, when you put management in place, when you put all the workers in place, let's say it's Amazon, you got your drivers, you got your warehouse workers, you got your call center operators, you know, you have all these different people that are important for the function of your business to run as it does today. I'm not talking about when it started. I'm talking about the company has grown and now we're at this point. At what point is it, well, since I started the company and this was all my idea, I still deserve way more money and way more benefits and way more all of this than the people who are actively generating those profits. If there's nobody to answer the phones, then, you know what I mean? Like, then the customer service is gone. If there's no drivers to deliver the packages, then the business model's gone. If there's no warehouses to store the product in, the business model is gone. So again, I respect if you've set all of these things up and you've worked hard, you know, to build this company and blah, blah, blah. I'm with you. But my serious question is, at what point do you reward the workers? And I'm not talking about, oh, well, they agreed to it, so it's just, no, I'm talking about, at what point does a CEO say, you know what, it makes sense, not only financially, but also morally, for me to pay the employees more, because without them, technically, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in. Like, at what point do we look at it like that instead of, well, I'm the CEO, so, you know, I'm going to give y'all crumbs while I'm eating this meal. You know what I'm saying? CEOs have a mentality of, if there's 10 slices of pizza, I'm going to take 9 of them. And then that last slice is for the rest of the workers to figure out what to do with. Good luck. That's how they treat it. That's how they treat it. And people act like that's fair for some reason just because that's the way it is. I don't agree. Especially when you see numbers, again, like 344 times as much as a typical worker. Again, there's nothing you can say to me that's going to convince me that this number is justified. I don't care how much work you put in 20 years ago when you first started the company. if your company is, if you're able to make $5 million a year and you have workers that are on government assistance, like I totally agree with the bill that I believe it was Bernie Sanders and there was a couple of other people who were involved. And the bill basically was however much money the employees at your company receive in government assistance, we're going to tax the company that same amount of money. I think that's a brilliant idea because one of two things is going to happen. One, these businesses are going to be kicking back in, you know, tax wise, and that lowers the burden on us as individuals, because as it kind of stands right now, we're the ones who make that burden up. We're the ones that are, you know, paying for these workers to receive assistance and benefits. So it would take that burden off of us a little bit more and put it on to the companies, which is a good thing. Or it'll just make the companies pay their employees more, so that way they're not having to pay that tax at the end of the year or whatever. So either way, I think that is probably the best way to move forward with this. Or you could just put a regulation in place that says the CEO is not allowed to make however much more than the average employee. You know, so right now it's 344. It used to be, what was the number in the 60s? What was it? 21 times in 1965. It was 21. So even if we went back to the 21 number, which I know we never would in modern day capitalistic America, like it's always been capitalism, but like it's just in hyperdrive right now. So that's all people care about is money. So even if we, let's say we took it to 50, if we made it 50 times, a CEO, let's say there was a regulation in place that says the CEO is not allowed to make more than 50 times the average salary of the average employee. Let's say that's the case. What do you think happens then? Again, all the workers get paid more. They probably feel better about coming to work. You know, they're not as miserable and, oh, I got to come to this place and the only reason I'm coming is just to pay bills and not be homeless. Like, no, you're going to give them incentive to actually maybe live a fulfilling life outside of the workplace because they'll have a little bit more money to do so. And then what happens? The business is still going to do what the business does, especially if you're a successful, good businessman. You'll figure it out, right? That's what you do. So if that's the case and your pay goes up, the employee's pay goes up, but your pay is still tethered to that. So even if the average employee is making 100 grand, if you're making 50 times more than that, you're still up. So there's no loss for you other than instead of getting $6 million, I might only get 4. Like that's really the only negative there. And if you've built a lifestyle to where you are dependent on spending $6 million a year, that's on you. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a certain level where it's like, okay, you've got everything you need. You've got everything and you've got extra things that are just there to make you happy. What else do you require in order to be fulfilled? So that's a bigger issue. Obviously, that's not anything that necessarily politics will resolve. That's more of a cultural, societal, moral sort of thing. And, you know, obviously, if you live in a capitalistic society that values capital over everything, then yeah, most people will conform to that way of thinking. So I'm not necessarily, you know, mad at anybody for that, you know, who wants to get theirs and they're like, hey, if I got to shit on some people to do it, it's like, well, that's kind of what our country taught you to do. So, you know, it's not cool. I don't like it. I wish you didn't think that way, but you know, that is our society. That's just what it is. It's money over everything. You know, if you're poor or you're broke, it's your fault. You did something bad or you didn't work hard enough or you just, you know, it's always on you. It's never a systemic thing. It's never a, hey, maybe the game is rigged. Well, I'm here to expose that the game is rigged. So, with all that being said, man, this is Shane G. This is Politics as Usual. Catch me every week right here on Ethos Media Network. Please make sure to go subscribe to the Patreon as well. We got that going. So yeah, appreciate y'all, and we'll catch you next week. Peace.